Hi, my name is Sally Barnard, an artist, author, and spiritual experiencer. Welcome to Call Me Zena, a true story into the spiritual realms. Join me as I sit and discuss the journey of self-discovery, and with the help of my spirit guides, it's time to trust your intuition. Sit with me and call in live 888-994-4995 Studio A. And now onto the show. Hi, good afternoon everybody, and welcome to my show. For the people that are watching me, and you have contacted me, quite a few people, we're going to have a very similar topic that we had last week, but I do thank you for my audience. I really do appreciate you, and I show such gratitude. The next thing that I also do want to say, and my heart goes out to the people in California, I just want to say, put your prayers out there. Hopefully, it's a horrible, devastating situation. I don't watch the news that much, but from what I hear, they're having a really rough time. So just pray for the people in California that have been affected. So now on with my show. Any questions? We've got a lovely studio audience here. Oh, hi. Yes, we are, but I was waiting for the picture, if there's a picture that's coming up. I guess, oh, that's what I wanted to see. Okay, this is a drawing. Actually, it's in my book. This is something that I did a few years ago. I had no idea what I was drawing, and I did many, many sketches that way, which are also in my book. But at that time, Adamir Aldo, my guide, was with me, and he looked at each one of my drawings that I had done at that time, and he does an interpretation on them. So the interpretation, if I was to read it, it's kind of, without maybe reading my story, it might not really, you may not completely understand what he was saying, but I'm going to do my best to kind of explain a little bit. And with questions, which I like, obviously I work very well with questions. It's a lot to do with vibrational energy, that particular drawing. I have several which he's interpreted, and our DNA, and it's coming from there. And he explains in the drawing, how am I able to tap into that? Ask me that. I really don't know myself, but somehow I'm being guided and I can do these things. I was actually drawing from incarnations from many years ago, lifetimes that I have in my own mind, remembering from this particular lifetime. But I have remembered from other, because I never saw it in this lifetime, but I remember from other lifetimes. So that's part of my story too. So on with the show, and I think I'm going to need some water. Excuse me. Has to happen, right? They don't want me to talk about it, but I'm going to override that. Thank you, Dawn. So questions, any questions that you have, please, as you know, that's how I work.
I have a question. Like from our conversation before, so in an Interstellar, it was recorded in 2014, and there's a lot of scenes and
from the movie, right?
From the movie that nowadays have occurred. So how did the screenwriter, the story writer, or the producer capture all that?
Okay, so just to explain a little bit about the movie itself, we actually watched it last night. Thank you, Dawn. I'm just going to have a quick sip of water. And many movies that are similar, like The Matrix and some of the other movies, they write about it's similar. I get the questions and I feel that I can give the answers to some of the things that have happened in that movie. It's a knowing, let's say, that certain people have, and they put it on the screen. And anybody that can kind of relate to it, and a lot of my shows do talk about some of the things that was on that particular movie, it's something that just comes to you. This is how I do my show, through questions. But I will say, anybody that's interested in what I talk about, and the people that have tuned in obviously must be, because they wouldn't be tuning in to watch that movie. In Interstellar, it was called, yes. It talks about the third and fifth dimension. It has many things in there that are so, for me personally, I just loved. Where do I get that information from? I'm really not sure. I know that I'm guided into talking about this, and I'm obviously guided into talking about the movie today, because we had done something. Steve and I were watching the movie, and in one particular scene, not to give too much of the movie away, they talk about wormholes. And before they started to talk about that, I was explaining to Steve something about if you take a piece of paper and you put it together, so it's not out like that, it's that, and you go, there's more detail. But having just said that to him, the next scene in the movie, they actually repeated exactly what I had just said to Steve. So vibration goes out, and it goes in all over everywhere.
It was a drop the mic moment.
It was, yes, it was, and it's validation for myself too. So yes, that's a good topic. So let's see what questions we get.
You've spoken often about dimensions and timelines, and the movie dealt greatly with dimensions and timelines. Could you explain exactly what is meant by different timelines?
Well, for anyone that understands a little bit about this, we switch timelines, and it's hard to go into detail about that, but just I accepted it in the beginning without really completely understanding it. So every time we have different, our road is guided and we can go this way, or this way. So we actually pick timelines that would best suit, we have free will, so it would best suit our journey. It's really difficult in a few minutes to just, I accepted it. The best thing is to look up maybe timelines, alternative universes. It's very interesting. Listen to other programs, not just myself and my program. There is a lot out there for people that are interested. I just accepted that I'm on one timeline and then I'm on another. And actually, and I often tell people, what I can do is I can only prove what I say by example of myself. It's proving to myself that this does exist. I can't expect everybody to believe that, and I completely understand that because I didn't until I had a personal journey where I was on that these things kept happening to me. Part of my story, as you know, I was one person 1 minute, the next day I was completely a different person. I was able to draw, I got very much into this. And people that knew me, they just said to me, you're so different. But that was my journey, and I shifted a timeline. And we shift continually, a lot of different timelines. Karen, I know you want to ask me something.
How is it that you have the knowing, you have the call? How does somebody know that they were chosen for that?
See, it's not about my ego of that happened to me and I know all this. And I believe that we could all tap into a certain amount of this type of energy. I was very stubborn, actually, in the beginning. I had to be shown the way that I was 20 years ago, that I was doing things that there was no way the old me could do, which one was painting, one was understanding so much about where we are and what was happening in my life. I get my guide here on earth was showing me. This was undeniable to me, but I didn't know, so I thought many years ago. I think it's a lot to do with, I'm going to say, previous lifetimes, what we've learned in other lifetimes, because we don't actually lose what we learn. We're on a journey here, and we're all on a journey. I obviously, many centuries ago, because that was the one I was drawing from at that time, learned a lot in that particular lifetime. Now, having said that, for the last few lifetimes that I had, apparently, from what I know, it was dormant. But I was here in this lifetime to now talk about what had happened to me and to open up more. And I had help because I had my guide show myself. I think it's a lot to do when I say previous lifetimes. It's in what we would call our DNA, which Aldo interpreted that drawing as our DNA. Some people, let's say, might pick it up quicker than someone else because they've accessed it. That's the best way that I can explain it.
When you were called, were you scared?
No. That's a great question, because anybody that's, tuned into this that wants to know more, fear is our worst enemy in understanding that. When you're fearful, I truly believe you block what's coming to you. I was very open. I've often said, and you know this, Steve, too, I am not fearful of anything. I mean, that sounds pretty broad, might be, but in my mind, I'm going to say, I'll handle it. It's maybe a lesson. I don't particularly want to be tested in anything that's, really scary, but I'm not fearful of the unknown, let's say that. And so I was open to this information, and I still am, and I get information all the time. I do this show without knowing any of the questions that I'm going to be asked, and, I have a following, people are interested. So basically, I hope that answered the question.
So it took your first traveling, and then Aldo approaching you and then explaining and started your journey with Aldo to bring this all out. But in retrospect, didn't you have all of these experiences, although you didn't know what it was, in early childhood? And which
Yes,
means
but I didn't, what was happening to me in my childhood, I had nobody to talk to about it because I didn't have anyone to talk about it. I thought everybody was experiencing what I was experiencing because I didn't necessarily share it. You wouldn't share something that much if you think everybody else is having the same thing happen to them. It was only later on, and I predicted things earlier in my life, you know, of things that but I thought, well, that's because I can, and I thought everybody else can. Actually, everybody else can, but we just haven't opened up to it. And I started then when I opened up with Aldo explaining to me, I'm meeting people that are into what we talk about and understand that. I want teachers myself. I want people to give me more information that I'm privy to myself, not just from spirit guides. I'm lucky enough to be able to hear them, so that's good.
Would you say that you and people similar to you have, for lack of a better way to put this, more alien in them than other people?
Well, yeah, they have a different DNA, yes, because the people, this is just my take on it, but it's talked about a lot. Yes, there are certain people that can pick up this quicker than other people. Some people don't want to know about it at all, and that's fine too. But I find that the ones that are interested and that ask me the correct questions for me to answer are usually kind of have the same type of DNA, are coming from, maybe the best way that I can explain it, are coming from a long time, many years back, not just 1,000. I'm talking about a long time ago, which, you know, I don't remember a lot, but I do relate to some of the stories from those days, and I find people that I talk to also are relating to them. Not, of course, everybody, but a certain amount.
Does any of the connection that you have, do you feel it's luck, like someone?
No, it's not luck. It's what we draw. It's, you know, they call it whatever you want, the law of attraction or whatever, because what I put out, there are other people putting out the same thing. And somewhere in this studio, a lot of people have come in with that same understanding, or, you know, we're all on a journey. I want to hear from other people as people want to hear from me. It goes together. And we will. I put that out. And it's happened time and time again. And you understand a lot, but we recognize that for all that you have been through, Karen, and I know that too. But, you know, we all have things in our lives. Sometimes we have a little bit more than a lot of people, but that connection will always, I feel, you'll feel that it will be there, as I did with Dawn and Freddie too. I felt very connected to you, Dawn, my silent guest here.
No, I'm listening to everyone ask you the questions. I think it's great that you have an audience today.
Yes. So, okay, so we can continue with what we're talking about. Do you have a question, Dawn?
So when you first, I guess you're in a trance when you are traveling, what does it feel like?
It's a good feeling. It's just that's how it actually all happened to me in the beginning. Because I started to astral project. But when I say a trance, I am in a trance when I do my drawings and my paintings. It's like a form of meditation, actually, because I don't know, or also my prose. When I actually astral projected, that was slightly different because you actually do leave your body. You go into an astral plane. You actually are not, you know, you leave that body. But that feeling, for anybody out there that's had it or just beginning to understand a little bit, it's quite amazing. It's quite amazing. It does happen. There are many, many stories on people traveling, many.
Have you ever had your spiritual guide help you rescue somebody or help somebody in a hard time?
Well, yes, they do. But actually, my guide, who was here on Earth, Aldo, came to my rescue quite a few times because he was able to do that. So coming from another point, he's not here, so I can't tell you to tell the story. But I had an accident when I fell down and I broke my arm. And I was rushed to the emergency room. And I had no time to get on my phone and talk to anybody. However, as I was in the emergency room, he was standing right there. So I never contacted him. And many times when the car broke down sometimes, and a few times, the next thing I know, his car is right next to me to help me. So yes, it happens. It's you know, he was very advanced. So I'm, although he told me before he passed that I was there, but yes, you know, and I'm sure I have been at the right place at the right time to help somebody too myself. Yeah.
Wow.
When you travel, do you feel a warmth from them? Do you know, is it a different feeling, a different greeting? How do you communicate? Do you talk?
It's yes, I did, and it's only the last couple of years that I realized I was actually in a spaceship, because I have proof of my, you know, what happened to me in here, but I thought I was just out of my body flying around. But when I think about it, I actually write in here that I was talking to people. I don't know if I wrote a craft. I haven't reread my book recently, but I was in a craft. And I was talking to people.
So you're verbally talking to them?
Yes, verbally.
In
It's
English?
telepathy, but
Telepathy.
it was in English, yes, because maybe I could understand it now. Yes, because I remember certain words. They offered me some fruit at one point, which I know I wrote down, because when I would wake up and go back to sleep and wake up again, I would document what was happening to me. And one, they were telling me to try some fruit, actually. It's vivid. It's going back about 19 years ago. And they said something about boko or something, the fruit. So it's very real. I don't know how I could possibly remember my dreams, so to speak, from 18, 19 years ago if it wasn't a real experience.
And did it feel different than human to human? Or is it similar?
Well, it's very similar. In fact, I remember, and I don't mind now talking about going to other planets because people are very interested in that. I was on one particular planet, and it was very similar to us. I couldn't understand exactly at the time, and I came out with my book many years ago. Today, I will openly talk about it because they might not say, well, take us somewhere type of thing. But one of the planets, yes, the houses and everything were very similar, which I do document in there. They had dogs, I remember. Some of them looked a little different, but it's not unsimilar. Today, I'm a complete believer that we are not alone here on this big universe here. There are many, many different planets. How do I remember what I went through? Many people have done this.
And when you're traveling, is it here today, here in a second, or do you feel you travel, like walking down a corridor or going on a ship?
No, I sometimes was instantly somewhere else. In the beginning, yes, and I remember I would fly, so to speak, that was out of my body around the neighborhood. And he said, don't go into someone's houses, but it's very true because you see the lights. You have to, it's all permission. You need to have permission.
Wow.
Well, I hadn't gone around my neighborhood and said, if I'm flying, will you give me permission to enter? So, you know, I stayed away from that. The planets was different because I went in a craft. Most times I was in a craft.
Interesting. And any of the strongest messages that you got?
Well, yes, I think my message was to write this first book to say that I had been to other planets, because I'm going back now many, many years ago when people were less accepting as they are today. And I can only prove by my example to myself. I want to tell my story to other people, but the proof lays within myself because I know what I saw. I know who I spoke to. And, you know, if I want to hear other stories from people that have had similar experiences, and many people have astral projected because there is a plane. Many people have been abducted, many, many people. And it took me a while to realize that that was actually happening to me too. Not every one of my travels was an abduction, but many, many were.
So do you think you're a messenger for them?
I'm beginning to see that now, to tell people, you know, because disclosure will come back, and I think we just had a message just then. Okay, will be shortly. I do believe that. There are many people now with many, many stories. I was hearing one a little while ago. I just happened to turn on a program and they were talking about the aliens that landed in Miami. Well, we're in Florida, and they were very tall ones. But, you know, either people were scared. Many people apparently did take pictures, but the pictures, as they left the mall, and this is what I heard on the program, they actually wanted to see their pictures on their phone, and somehow they were deleted.
But do you think that's true? Or do you think people really saw them? Or do you think it was an apparition? Because Unless they wanted to be seen, they would not have been seen, correct?
They're trying their hardest, I think, many of them, not everybody, because some of them, may have different intentions, but the majority of these aliens, which I love these questions, do want to be seen right now. They know. I mean, common sense. We see a lot of strange things. Today, people have cameras on them all the time. They didn't many years ago.
Do aliens function like humans, or what is the difference between
Well, there are many
aliens?
different types of aliens, Karen. That's a good question, too. Yes, they have a different, perhaps, mindset, because a lot of them are much more advanced than us. Not all of them, but a lot are, because a lot of our technology, I truly believe today, comes from reverse technology. And someone said to me, but it's us doing these things. Okay, let's say it is us on this earth. How are they able to do reverse technology unless they had something that had the technology that was advanced in the first place to recreate that? So common sense, if you begin to look at this, that maybe there is something else, maybe they can teach us, maybe they have the technology today that we don't have, because we've expanded our technology in the last 50 years, unbelievable. Is our brain that great without any help to be able to have a picture on a phone from when you didn't even have telephones in the beginning? That within, maybe it's going back more than 50 years. But when we first heard, I remember someone said, they'll have our picture on the phone as we're talking. I'm going, I don't want that, because I may have just got out of bed, but today we all accept that. That's what's happening, right? So we're evolving, and I think the time is now that we need to evolve, because a lot of things are happening on our planet. I believe they're here to help us. The majority, I can't say all of them, but I believe the ones that are showing themselves truly, which we had discussed before, are here to help us.
Speaking of the ones that are showing themselves, I mean, as early as a month ago, there was drone after drone after drone after drone, and people thinking they're drones, but other people thinking they were not drones.
Well, the only explanation that I feel that I want to say, because I'm not 100% certain, I have my own views, of course. If, let's say, it was a whole lot of drones all the time going up in the air, did they suddenly say, hey, stop everybody? Because we don't talk about it anymore this last month. And there's suddenly no drones? Did they all get rid of their drones and they decided they're not going to do this anymore? I mean, from being in the news all the time to nothing now, and nobody's having any, well, people may be having sightings, but not like they were. So let's lose a little common sense here. What happened to all the drones? That's a good...
I guess they were trying to do some spraying out in California, and there was apparently a drone that
hit I read that, yes.
That they were having some hard times with putting out the fires because the drone was there.
But
correct. That was like so they say, a one incident.
But we don't hear all that's on the news because
exactly.
I mean, they did show a lot of these drones because people, whatever they are, I think it's a combination actually, but they suddenly all stopped supposedly.
Why is so much shown like now than before? Like, why do we have more insight now?
Okay, that's a very good question, and I like that too. I always like to acknowledge the questions. Yes, because we're changing. Earth itself is changing. Earth is advancing. We're going from a 3D dimension into a 5D dimension. And anybody that wants to watch that show, which Freddie had mentioned for me to listen to, this is true. We are changing. We are beginning to understand much more. We're getting curious. Okay, it's not all taboo now, that these subjects. So the more you open somebody's mind, the more they're going to look at things another way. If you don't, someone's got to start somewhere. And there are many people before me and my program that have talked about this. My job here, I truly feel, is to open people's minds. It's everything I talk about that I have seen is 100% true, to me. I saw it. I went to planets. I have met many people today. I have knowledge of drawings of things that I have never seen in this lifetime, and yet I'm drawing from other lifetimes. So everything I talk about, I truly believe because I've been the reciprocant of this, as other people are. So the more people that talk about it, the more we're going to raise our vibrational energy, which is very important, because if we're on a lower vibrational energy, we actually don't even see these things. But when we start to raise our vibration, it's all here. So we we see more, so we question more, we talk more, we seem to meet the people that are understanding what we're talking about. That's what's happening now.
And Sally, all the art that's behind you.
Yes.
We don't often have you surrounded by all of your different pieces. They're all different styles.
Right.
Are any of them through this trance-like state, or any of them you think indicative of when you traveled and you brought forward some interpretations?
Okay, that's also interesting because it's interesting to me too. At the time I was doing a lot of these drawings, my guide Aldo was here and he would take in and explain to me. They're very different, especially my sketches, which you're seeing now on the screen, were very different. So I would, and also people, you know, with an artist usually they have one style, maybe two, but I have, as anybody that's seen my art, many, many different styles. I think today, a lot of, actually the two that are very similar either side of this is something that I had never done before, but I'm starting a website with art on clothing, and this was ideal for that. So each one has a place in my journey. This one behind you, the one with the lady, the one you can see there, Aldo explained to me that that was from a previous lifetime, and they were, I'm going to call them the characters that were in that lifetime. They are faces. I've got so many, they're very, it somehow isn't, I don't know how it showed itself there because it's different. But that's kind of okay, but that's okay, because it's like in the middle and it's not, but that's part of what happens, Dawn, you can see that, right? But that has many faces in it. And that was from another lifetime that I drew. That was right in the beginning of my work, actually.
But that one's you see so much more refined and detailed in faces, and
Yes.
each line is so precise.
Yes.
Do you recall painting that? Do you know what you're painting, like when you did that?
No.
What it was going to look like?
I had no idea. I don't know until I am in a trance-like state, and I do them quite fast, some of them. I do not know I've finished until I've finished, and I actually am here again, and I see the canvas of what I've actually painted. I have no clue of
You
what
can
I'm
see
drawing.
the faces, and you can see it was
Mm-hmm.
from a previous lifetime. And then the one on your right,
That's one of the newer ones that I've done, and it to me it's fascinating because I've just started to put my art on clothing, which my website will be finished in a couple of weeks, and that was perfect for some of the, like the dresses and the shoes. I'm going to have shoes, so I must have done that without knowing that, with something in mind that it was going to be on. The ones that were more in the past were to prove to me that I'm pulling something from another century, which at that time Aldo was there to explain that to me. I did many drawings that way in sketches.
The newer paintings, like the abstract that
Yeah.
we're talking about, you hadn't painted in about two and a half years.
Right.
And all of a sudden, we fixed up your art studio and
Yep.
you started painting again.
Right.
And you didn't know what you were going to do, and this is what came out.
And that's happened all the way along, Steve. I will paint for 3 or 4 months. I just get obsessed with doing it, and I will do it. Then I'll stop, just the same way that I was obsessed. I will stop. But every time there's a period of time, my artwork will come through completely different the next time and the next time.
So you had your art talent come to you. You didn't actually did you know you had that talent?
No idea
It
at
just-
all. I had no idea. I only knew I was actually, which again is in my book, my story, I was scribbling one time. Someone had put me on hold for a while, and I was, you know how you just scribble and
Right.
sketch. And it made sense. It looked to me, I'm actually drawing something. I couldn't draw a straight line. But it was gradual process. I did that, and then I realized that I maybe I can sketch and maybe I can draw. In the very beginning were things from other lifetimes that I was drawing signs, symbols, buildings from other lifetimes. I would never have known, but I had Aldo with me, and he would explain to me, as he does some of the interpretations in the book, that he said, now you don't have to take my word for it. I had not researched anything on a computer because I wouldn't have even known what to research. But he told me, once I had led him into the conversation, he never gave me the answers until I'd asked the question. And he'd say, go into that period at that particular time and you will see exactly what you've drawn. Because in the computers now, they go back and they've taken from history pictures. And there was some of my artwork or sketching that I had done.
Sally, ready to take a commercial break?
Yes, sir. We will be back the other side of this show. I have to say the show because we are on the other side too. I always say that. part of what
A
I
True
said.
Story, Call Me Zena, is the telling of Sally Barnard. Born in London, England at the end of the Second World War, she came into the U.S. in 1979. A mother of 2 and a grandmother of 4, she settled in Florida and worked in real estate. While going through a difficult time in her life, she was admitted into a hospital overnight in December of 2005. While settling back into her life, she began having vivid dreams and documenting them. By the 3rd dream, a lady gave her a message to draw. With no artistic background or interest into art or history, Sally listened to her dreams and grabbed a paper and crayons. Today, she has over 150 pieces of inspiring art and poetry. This book follows her journey and interpretations of these messages. She describes in detail how she is able to astral a project and who she has met along her travels, including her spirit guides. This book will show you how anything is possible with an open mind. These events have changed Sally's life and direction, and this book will show you how to change yours. Purchase Call Me Zena on Amazon today, authorhouse.com and amazon.com.
My story starts at 4 or 5 years old. My name is Sally Barnard, and I was born at the end of the Second World War, in the middle of an air raid siren going off. My parents were in a movie theater, and my mother went into labor. My father ran out of the movie theater, but there was no cabs to be available because everybody is running for cover. However, they found one, and the taxi driver was given the address to take my father and my mother to the hospital. As my mother was in labor, about a half an hour, I arrived at exactly midnight. I think I was fed messages at a very early age. My parents used to like to play cards, and they had a card game every Wednesday or Thursday night at home when I was a baby. And I actually said to them one day, "Why do you keep waking me up at night? The card game is waking me up, and I can't get back to sleep so quickly." And they looked at each other and they said, "We're not really waking her up." They were quite away from my bedroom. And they called in a psychic to say, "What in the world is going on?" And the psychic said that I'm getting many messages that are waking me up at night. I thought whatever I was experiencing, other people were experiencing too. You don't know until you realize that you are different. Many things were happening to me, things that were unexplainable to me. What I had dreamt was happening. I could sense many things, and the things that I was sensing were coming about, but something was going on. I will explain to you everything. You're ready. Thank you for joining me through this journey of self-discovery with the help of my spirit guides. I'm Sally Barnard, and you can find my book at authorhouse and amazon.com, or visit my art on my clothing in my boutique at artbysallybarnard.com. Now back to the show. Anybody that's listening, if you feel like you have a question you want to ask me, other than just our studio audience, it's gone a little quiet here, 888-994-4995. Call in with any questions that you have on this particular subject, or anything. It doesn't necessarily, Studio A.
Sally, let's go to your book.
Okay.
Your book, you wrote it when?
I wrote it, when did I write it?
Yeah.
Oh, I think the first, actually it was in 2000, I'm not sure because I do dates in the book, actually. It was about the time of 2005, I believe. It's quite a while back, 2006.
Okay, now you
I documented.
You illustrated at the beginning of the show a picture.
Yes.
And in that picture, you elaborated, you spoke to Aldo, and he interpreted what the pictures were.
Yes, he was interpreting this. I could read the interpretation. It's kind of a little long, and without me perhaps explaining that I was doing this in a trance-like state, it's vibrational energy that I was picking up. But he interpreted the same way that I was drawing. In other words, I was doing the drawing, and then he went into a room himself quietly and went into all the interpretations of what he actually saw in this particular one. And there's about 7 or 8 more in my book. He would do that. So this is a lot, as far as I know, that he talked about. I was catching like the DNA or something. Let me just find it. I should be aware.
So on
okay,
that
the detail.
on that particular picture, did you wake up one morning and just started to draw it?
Yes,
And he was there.
He was in my house.
So when you drew the picture and showed it to him, or did he explain to you something that you drew a picture about?
No, what he did is I did many. So he took.
I just want to talk about this one particular.
Oh, that particular one. No, I drew it when he knew that I was painting. I was in another room, so I was sketching at that time from other lifetimes too, which I was aware that I was doing because he told me they were from other lifetimes. So I sketched this without having a clue what I was doing. I was just enjoying it, really. I was really feeling good about it. So when he decided to take the interpretation, to take these drawings and interpret it, this was one of many that he did interpret. And he saw many things in there. He was doing what I was doing. He went into another room and took this drawing from what he saw, and he interpreted it as he did with many of the other ones.
So he waited until you finished it.
Oh, absolutely, yes. This was like, he started to interpret them maybe 6 months after I had done these drawings, because I had continued. There are many, many more. I have many that he's interpreted. And it was very fascinating to me because I didn't know what I was doing, but once he began to point it out, he was actually helping me on my path. I started on my path because I started drawing previous lifetimes, but he helped me because I knew I had done this without understanding it. And even when he interpreted it, I wasn't even sure of what he actually was saying. But let's go forward to now. It makes a lot of sense to me. And
But that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the message that he gave you
right.
in the interpretation of this piece and how it relates from back then to today.
Well, for me, for my journey, I know that I drew this. This is my artwork, and his interpretation has more meaning today than it did when he first interpreted it to me, because it's a continual growth pattern that you're on. I was growing, so I was reading what he said, but I didn't truly understand it. As viewers that will buy the book may not completely understand it, but when you keep this copy of the book, and anybody that's buying it, keep the copy. Excuse me, it's like they don't want me to talk about it. Over the years, it's made much more sense to me. That's what I'm going to say, because I'm understanding more of what I did all those years back.
But what was the interpretation of the piece?
Of this, I can read it. It says in detail, you know what? I'm going to get Karen, can you read this? Because it'll give me a little break for a second. I'm going to cough.
It says, the detail in this drawing is a microcosmos in itself, resembling hallucinated drawings by the likes of Salvador Dali or Picasso, but even more nuclear. Observe the delineations, all done by hand, without metrics or pre-measurements, that complement each other and create the necessary gravitational field to maintain aesthetics. Observe the 4th and 5th dimensional array of cubes, insider triangles, and rectangular forms surrounded by circular globes, connected by triangular lines, complex enough to make Pythagoras look like an infant. Notice also the vibrational energy from one linear form to the other that in theory create an orbital force maintaining a nucleus neutron suspended in animation with protons. These circle around and around, creating the illusion of matter and replicating Earth's orbit about the sun.
Thank you so much. You did that beautifully.
How many people besides me wish they had had an opportunity to sit with Aldo for just a few minutes?
I know, but I
Yes.
would love to know what Sally thinks the picture means to her, because this is just an interpretation.
Yes, but my interpretation today is very similar to how Aldo interpreted it. I myself, although I had done that, I honestly didn't completely understand, which we were just discussing, what I had actually drawn. And he was able to, some of them, this was a little more detailed, some of them are not quite as detailed. I think you were definitely meant to read that because I started coughing and now it's gone away. So yes, it's actually fascinating to me because I left this book alone for a few years, partly because people may have been interested, but they were even scared to say they were interested in my book at that point. But today, no, more and more people are absolutely openly wanting to talk about
A number of
these
your
things.
drawings had spaceships and
Yes, they do.
aliens and things like that.
One of the first few that I ever did, I believe there's some in here, were actually spacecrafts. I didn't know. I knew I was drawing that, but I had no idea why, because I was getting messages to do. And he actually told me one is like a space, it was a way station, I don't know if it's in my book, which you have seen with rocket ships. And this was like my fourth or fifth drawing. I mean, why would I relate to something like that? But going back to your DNA, which we were just discussing, it's very much in my DNA. I do truly believe for myself, and I can only talk for me, that I was around in those days. You know, I had to have been, because how have I seen these things now? I haven't seen them in this lifetime. So there were rocket ships going back, and I'm going to say thousands of years. There were many things. We have here on Earth. We'll go to the pyramids. How did they build these things? If we start questioning, I guess my show today is question. Question what you see and do research on it. And the more that you open your mind to these things that were built thousands of years ago, we go back a long more than history will let us know. If you're people that are wanting to understand it, I believe that they have a reason for wanting to understand it, because maybe, just maybe, we were around then. Some people that say, oh, leave me alone with all this, I don't want to know it, that's fine. They may be what we would call new people here. There's nothing wrong in being that a new person, but the ones that have the interest, I truly, truly believe with all my heart that they were there or they heard about it in other lifetimes.
You mentioned the word way station a moment ago, and isn't it so that we've discussed that alien civilizations would come down here for some of our natural resources that they were running out of?
Yes, and that was gold, actually. And I'm so happy that I hear you asking me these questions, Steve, because for me to pass this information on to people is what I here to do. I truly believe that. And this story has been written thousands of years ago on clay tablets about this, how people came from another planet down to Earth to mine actually gold from this planet, which I remember having this conversation with you, Karen, if you don't mind talking about it. From nowhere, we were discussing something, and yet your brother had told you something about that. So how am I in a studio, and I hadn't been here that long at that time, you're asking me questions and telling me the story about this. How do I know? How do we know? How do we know? We were there.
With you saying that, I was just thinking, how do you know, like, how often are people in tune with a spiritual guide, or how often are people even given that chance?
Well, we're all given that opportunity, okay, but it sometimes takes us a lot, which they call waking up. And I began to wake up, and I realized that I was being guided, but I'm also being guided into past lifetimes here. That's also important, because for me to have the knowing or knowledge of our planet, how wonderful is that, to be able to go back in history and know how maybe we started, how other people may have come down here. No matter what it was, they weren't the only ones that came, but at that particular time, to mine gold for their planet, how wonderful to know these stories. Now, not everybody's ready, and I'm sure not people listen to my program if they're continually listening and they're ready to hear these stories because they have an interest like we have. But I'm not if I was making it up, how do I hear it from other people? How do you know part of the story? Dawn, Freddie, I believe, does know the history of a lot of this too. Especially sitting over there, Russ, who's very quiet, knows the story. Hi, Russ. How do we all know it if one person is just making up this story? It's traveled. We're ready to really disclose a lot of this information, as you often talk about, Russ. I'm not, I realize you're sitting there. I forgot for a minute. But we talk about disclosure. It's so important for us to do this. For the people that want to spread the word, they're coming out now much more because it's more acceptable, more people are listening. So it's not just about what we're talking about from thousands of years ago, because part of that story is they came down in rocket ships. Where did they get that technology from? Where is this other planet that knows so much? There are many different planets where they have advanced technology to us. And it's important for people to maybe see it now, that perhaps we're being helped. We are, with technology.
I know Aldo came from Peru, but did he ever disclose to you that he felt he came from somewhere much greater than Peru?
Yes, he did. And one of the places in not too much of our past was from the inner earth, and that's how I got to understand a little bit, because there is a whole civilization, not just from what we call up there from other planets, because he also told me about other planets, but he also did explain to me a lot about inner earth, because I was ready to hear that. Saying that I was there. I believe I was one of the planets, but he did give me the story on that. How do I meet somebody in this lifetime that talks about all that I had an interest in, that I didn't even know I had an interest in?
And yet he wouldn't appear to you until you had your first travel.
No, and he never ever gave me a story unless I asked. So I never led him. In other words, it had to come from me to be inquisitive enough, and he had the answers. He didn't say to me, this is the way it is. I had to say, was this the way it is? And that makes so much sense to me today.
Were you ever required to change your atmosphere, your friends, or your stuff in your life to...
At that time when it all happened? Well, yes, because actually what took over was my friends, because a lot of my friends, when I started to talk a different way, they couldn't relate to me anymore. But suddenly, and it's not that I lost the friends, but we didn't have the same interests, so to speak. But as time went by, I'm meeting much more people that have this interest. So I'm gaining people what I used to do used to say to me, that knew me, they're saying, how did you change? How did you do what you did before? The people that met me in this new me would say, how did you do what you used to do before? And it just, to me, I thought, well, my gosh, I'm really portraying a different person, because I totally did change. I'm so happy that I did. So, and that's going back 20 years now, but I've been me now for 20 years, and I meet people from what I would say from another life, but was actually this life. They're just looking at me like, but you weren't like that. So we don't have quite, this doesn't mean that I don't like these people. They were my friends in both me and the other me, but I don't have the same interests anymore. Totally different.
Sally, the one page, the message, the interpretation you gave us, is the book a assortment of interpretations to one giant message?
I believe it all roads lead to that's what I'm hearing, to the message that I have today, Freddie. And each one of my Aldo's interpretations of my drawings is leading me to tell the story of so much more. Because I have artwork, I have sketches that obviously is not all in the book, that if I go back into it now, I see that it's a remembrance from something, and I need to tell people, if I remembered from other lifetimes, we can all do this if we have the interest and we have enough of our knowing. We need to spread this word to help humanity, and that's coming to me very strongly. We need to help humanity, and by being open-minded and accepting people from different places and planets in our life today, it'll make our life more simple. Although it would be complicated in the beginning. My guides just gave me that. That's not from me.
So do you know the end message that he was trying to give you?
Well, he basically, everything that he was telling me was explaining to me what was happening to me. And he wanted me to spread this word. And I've often said this, one of his last words to me before he passed was, Sally, you've learned enough now. I never believed that I had. He said, now be my mouth, be my mouthpiece because you'll be able to explain it. He wouldn't have come on here and done this. He would talk privately to people. He would never make himself known the way that I'm actually doing it now. But he recognized that I could do this. He did it on a one-to-one. And many people would approach him. And he never really turned people down, but he did it quietly. I'm doing it openly. He wanted me to do that.
Do you think once you started traveling, it increased your psychic abilities?
100%. Doing my show here too, actually, which is over 2.5, nearly close to 2.5 years now, because I'm in tune. I'm in tune a lot. I mean, I can turn it off. I don't do this all the time, but it's helping me. I'm growing within myself as I'm helping other people. I want to do that. That's what I want to do with my life, however I can.
So you were chosen.
Well, I chose to be chosen, I guess. I don't, because, you know, it's not all about, oh, I'm famous, or it's not about it, because gratitude and being humble is also part of this. But having said that, yes, I think I chose to do this, absolutely.
Are there some people who ignore their call?
100%. A lot of people do. I will not today, in the beginning, I wanted to tell everybody my story, everyone. But today I'm more selective. If I'm going to tell my story, and it takes a lot out of me to do that, I want to make sure that there's an interest. But it doesn't have to be that they have to believe me, but they will ask me the questions. So there's an interest.
Yeah, I agree with you, because some of our stories are just too horrific to remember, but I always feel like you know who your audience is and who needs to.
Well, I believe that's the people that are coming to me today, Karen, as we had not seen each other for a while, but this topic came up very fast from where we had left off, maybe about 10 months ago or even longer, I'm not sure. It will always be there. It will always come into the forefront of a conversation if it's meant to be said. And I will answer the best I can, because if someone is inquisitive and wants to know more, I'm spreading my word as they will spread their word. And it's really important today to what they call wake up.
How is it that people make their mark while they're alive here on Earth?
Well, in different ways. Maybe my art may help. For me, I can only talk about me. Maybe my artwork, someone will see something in my artwork, so I'm making a mark in their person's life. Someone that's tuning into my show today that may have not listened, or people that are listening because they're wanting to learn more. I certainly don't have all the answers, but I have enough to be able to do a show and show my art that there is so much more going on. I think we have a technical hitch which is now being corrected, okay? So that was a good question. Hopefully the audience heard, but you leave your mark, each one of us, in individual ways.
Speaking of the audience, if any of them would like to get a copy of your book, please scan the QR code on the screen or go to Amazon, call me Zena, or Author House.
Thank you. Yes, and it's a book it's got my interpretations of some of my art. It's got my artwork in it, but also I really, really would love people to read my story of the documentation that I wrote in the very beginning. How I started. We all start this journey in different ways, but this has taken me on a path that I never 20 years ago believed that I would be sitting here talking the way that I'm talking. And every day that goes by, I try to learn a little more. So if this starts people on their journey, please read it. I don't often talk about my book that much, as everybody in the studio knows, but it helps me to read what happened to me. So I want to help people to wake up. My show is here. I'm going to be here for a while. I'm not going anywhere. I'm open to questions. Please, I really do appreciate everybody that's listening in, to my viewers and people that take the time to listen to my show. Don't have, and what I really do appreciate, and I want to thank for people that are sharing it to people. I have a lot of shares. They actually listen to my show and tell their people, their friends, their relatives to listen to my show. That's the dominoes effect. That's how it goes out. And it does not go unnoticed. I'm very, very grateful to my viewers and my audience today.
Do you remember the rabbi that did your preface?
Yes, I do. Stephen Kodanik. Yes, and actually he started, funnily enough, to you mentioned him, which I don't talk about. He's been calling me recently. We reconnected a little bit. He lives in Orlando, but so much has happened to him, which he was telling me over the years. At that time, we met accidentally, but he became a good friend. And he was having I'm sure he doesn't mind if he's tuning in, many similar experiences, which at that time he was sharing with me, which I didn't understand really what was happening to him, as he probably didn't understand to me. But 20 years on, we're still talking. I hadn't seen him.
Maybe we can bring
in a
him
long
in on VMix one day.
Yes, I would love to. He actually asked to be on my show, so we'll interview him because he's in Orlando, but if he's ever in the area to come in, yeah.
So he I was reading here that I guess he was abducted as well.
Well, I'm not sure yes, I know he has a tremendous interest in that if he put it in my story, but he will openly talk the same way.
Or his son did.
Yes,
Interesting.
his son. Unfortunately, his son passed, in a horrible way, but he's very happy to openly, because he had many experiences which we shared at that time that were happening to him that, to me, I think, oh my gosh, but very similar things were happening to me too. How do you just meet somebody like that, and we had a lot to share. And he's a rabbi. I mean, that doesn't mean a rabbi can't do this, but it had more meaning at that point to me too, that, a rabbi's listening to my story. So,
And
Stephen, if you're listening, call in anytime or be a guest on my show, which we had talked about.
Yeah, let's send him a code and set up a time for you to bring him in on the screen.
Definitely, we'll do that. I'll call him, communicate with him. I don't know if he's listening now, but we'll tell him, yes, he's very interesting.
And when will your artwork be available in your clothing?
Hopefully in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
I say hopefully, it will be a few weeks, because I'm going to do a grand opening where I'm going to show people my art on clothing, and we're going to have a nice discount in the very beginning. So
Wonderful.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm getting a lot of interest already, but I'm saying, hold it, don't buy yet. Okay, especially I'm doing shoes, so people are very interested in the shoes too.
All right, you want to wrap
So
it
that
up?
should be up. Yes, so thank you so much once again for tuning into my show, and I look forward to hearing from you all. Anybody that wants to call in, we have another week ahead of us. Call in next week. Thank you. Bye-bye. You have been watching Call Me Zena with your host, Sally Barnard. As an artist, author, and spiritual experiencer, know that you can always seek me out for resources by visiting artbysallybarnard.com. Join us next week, Mondays at 2:30. Have a blessed day.